Time for the 8 o'clock hour, and that Cornelius Custom Service 8 o'clock hour for you. Coming right up, window tinting, audio, video, truck accessories, all for you at Cornelius Custom Services, 617 Supply Street, 549-5841, the number. Well, anytime you hear the taxi pulling up, that means Joe, the Brown Insurance guy, is going to come on in, and he is going to lay down the gospel according to the insurance.
Wow, that's some hefty stuff there.
Yes,
Rick.
so let us know what is going on insurance-wise. Joe, you know, I own a small business.
Yes, you do.
And my small business is insured by Brown Insurance Agency.
Yes, it is.
I have $1 million policy.
Yes.
Because of regulations and things that you have to get involved with. I just wonder how many people out there this morning have small businesses, understand what you've got to do to keep that small business going.
You know, it's one of those things when you're looking at a small business, whether it's a small business retail type of a situation, or it could be, maybe a welding company or manufacturing, whatever it is from a small business. We're just going to look at retail, for example, just kind of spotlight on retail this morning. You know, if you want to open up any type of a retail establishment, some of the things you need to consider, obviously, is location. Hey, where am I going to put this? So you're either going to buy a building or you're going to lease a building. All these things are called just kind of overhead cost type of a thing. One of the other things you have to consider with that is insurance. You know, you want to make sure that you're insured not only from a standpoint of the building if it, burns down, blows away, but even if you're a lessor, and you're leasing the building from somebody, you want to make sure, hey, if that building burns down, what happens to all my stuff? All the stuff that I stock in there, maybe you're a dry cleaner and you've got property of others that are put in there, waiting to be picked up. So you want to make sure that stuff's insured. The other thing you want to make sure of that a lot of people maybe don't even realize is an option is, okay, let's play the scenario that, we're starting to get a little bit cooler now. The heaters are going to start coming on in the morning. We see it all the time where the first time those heaters fire up, hadn't been checked in a while, next thing you know, the place catches fire. And you're out of business for a couple of months while they're rebuilding. What happens to that income that you were earning while that business was blowing and going that you're not earning now? Do the bills stop coming? Does the mortgage, does the lease on the place stop coming? All those things are still sending you bills, and you're like, well, wait a second, I'm not in business. How the heck am I going to pay for this? There's part of an insurance policy that you can get where it's called business replacement income, and it's designed to go back, see what you averaged either at that time of year. And there's very, very many different ways that you can configure this. But one way is to go back in your books and say, okay, on average, I'm doing X amount of dollars per month in revenue. And you can take out part of your policy to recoup that on a monthly basis while you're in business. And in some cases, you can even recoup that after you reopen to kind of get you back up and going. And I was talking to a gentleman the other day who had a fire at a retail establishment, and I was just talking to him and said, hey, what's one thing that you know now that you didn't know before about your insurance policy? Because when it comes to home and auto, when it comes to business, a lot of times people get it, they throw it in a drawer, and they never realize, kind of what they have. The one thing he said was, I now realize what business replacement income is because I didn't have it. And I kind of wish that I did. And so it's one of those things that as an agent, it's our job to sit down with you, go over your policies, and just make you aware of what you have, what you don't have, and not paint doom and gloom scenarios. But I guarantee you that if you ever have a loss, you're going to come in and say, hey, did I have that? Did I have that? How's this going to get done? How's that going to get done? It's always a good idea to know that ahead of time versus trying to, kind of, what is it? What's the old adage? Put the horse back in the barn.
Well, you put the cart before the horse, I guess. What do you say? Is that?
I don't know. You and I are both. I'm not sure what we're saying.
I'm not an old saying guy, but you look at businesses and things like that. You spend so much time running your business, you don't think about these things.
Exactly.
And a lot of times you go in there and you're like, okay, I've got to have insurance so I can get this job, or I got to have insurance so I can get this. And you just go in there and say, give me the piece of paper so I can show it to them.
Right.
And not even realizing what you have.
Exactly. We deal with a lot of small businesses as well. You brought up a very good point that have to meet certain requirements. I was dealing with a gentleman the other day who's starting up a business, and he's going to be dealing with contractors, both general contractors, homeowner contractors, things like that. And part of the requirement is that, for example, you carry $1 million general liability. what's weird is that we throw these numbers around all the time, $1 million GL, $1 million GL, and people say, oh, my gosh, that's a lot of money. Unfortunately, these days, that's kind of par for the course.
Right.
And the reason why it's par for the course is $1 million these days from a standpoint of getting sued is kind of not a lot when you look at litigious society that we're in. When you're talking about lawyers going after things from a liability standpoint, having $1 million coverage is that's kind of just where you need to be. So you find a lot of general contractors when you're dealing with putting buildings up and skyscrapers and stuff, when you're dealing with general contractors that are building roads and byways and stuff like that, having $1 million GL that's just kind of standard.
Yeah, and the wild thing about that is that in my case, I had to cover $1 million. I have to carry $1 million policy because of lawsuits and stuff like that, and I was just blown away at the price of this policy.
Right.
I mean, I'm paying $500 a year.
Yeah.
For $1 million policy.
And everybody is going to be different. You're paying $500 a year on $1 million GL because of what you do, for example, from an exposure standpoint. And people ask us all the time, why is insurance cost what it is, and how is insurance figured? And a lot of it has to do with exposure. When we say exposure, we're talking about things like what is the likelihood that something is going to happen that they're going to have to pay out. So, for example, for what you do, the exposure is pretty low for somebody coming up to you saying, hey, you caused injury because of what you're doing. Whereas, for example, if you're a construction company, if you're a you're building houses, you're clearing land sites, things like that, your exposure may be higher. Therefore, they're going to rate you appropriately to make sure that they're covered in the event something happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's all different depending on the business and things like that. But I think you'll be very surprised at what Bryan Insurance can do for you for your small business.
Right. We have so many markets out there. That is the benefit of going with an independent agency that has so many different markets and so many different appetites. And when we say appetites, it's just like the appetite that you have when you're hungry. It's, hey, what do I feel like eating today? In the insurance world, appetite means like how many markets do we have? How many companies do we have that we can go to out there that will suit and cover the business that you have? Not every business is a cookie-cutter type of thing. It's not a black and white, cut and dry, this is what we do. A lot of businesses these days, well, we do a little bit of this, we do a little bit of that, every now and then we'll do this. We mainly stay here, but from time to time we'll go do a job in Houston or Austin or something like that. And there's no one-size-fits-all policy. The benefit that Bryan Insurance can give you is that we have the companies that we deal with, such a large agency, not only as a whole as Bryan Insurance, but we're part of a larger group of agents that have the ability to go to these companies and say, hey, this is what we have. Let's talk about getting it covered. Being part of, having Bryan Insurance be a part of Combined Agents of America is a great thing for the consumer because we give you options, and that's what it's all about, having options.
Yeah, I've heard it many, many times. So when people would come in, my wife would always say something like, we have a market for that.
Exactly.
And so, and
it's like we have an app for that, but we have a market for that.
We have a market for that. So make sure you go by and talk to them. If you have a small business and you're looking for help or maybe need some advice on what to do, or you don't have any insurance and you need to do something, you need to call Joe. Now, how they get a hold of you guys that need some help?
Real simple, 549-2525. You can also come on up to the second floor of the Sierra Bank building. Be more than happy to sit down with you and kind of talk about scenarios for opening a small business, where your exposures are going to be to get started. But also, let us look at the policy that you have now and make sure that, A, it's up to code and up to par with what you need and what you're doing. Businesses change all the time. You want to make sure your coverage is there. It's always bad to find out after the fact that, oh, you didn't have coverage for that. Let us sit down ahead of time with you and look at the policy that you have and maybe make some recommendations for you.
So go by and see them today, Sierra Bank Building, second floor, 549-2525, and you'll be glad you did. Joe, appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Have a great day. Gonna get back in the taxi and head out of here. We got Def Leppard Fastball to get things rolling here on this 8 o'clock hour. Brought to you by Cornelius Custom Services. Stick around.
Q90.